In today's lesson, we are going to learn about while and do-while loops. Let's first go ahead and talk about while loops. A while loop is what we call a pre-test loop, and the reason why we call it a pre-test loop is because the condition is checked first. So it's possible that a while loop will never ever execute. If that condition it evaluates is true, then the code executes one line or block of statements at a time. If it is false, it skips all of the statements, either that one line or that whole block of statements that immediately follow it. Now there are two different ways that we will run while loops. Sometimes the while loop is count controlled, and that means that the event occurs until the variable reaches a specific value. In this case, we use what is called a loop control variable, or a common acronym is LCV, and this variable is going to be incremented or decremented each iteration of the loop, and an iteration is a full cycle of the loop. The other type of way that we can control our while loop is event controlled. And in an event controlled loop, we are going to use some type of event to get a value and determine if the loop should continue. So this could maybe be a program where you ask the user, do you want to continue? Press yes to continue or any key to exit. And then the user will tell the computer if it wants to keep on going. Another case would be what's called a sentinel value. And this is a value that the user can enter to let the program know that it's done. So in some cases, a sentinel value is a value that the user would never enter except to tell the computer that it wanted to leave. All right, let's first look at an example of a count-controlled while loop. So in this case, we are going to have a Boolean that is set up, and while this Boolean is true, we will enter our loop. So in this case, you'll notice that we start out with the count equaling 0, and then we have while count is less than or equal to 10. So first, I've initialized this variable, and then now I check to see if 0 is less than or equal to 10, which is true. So since it's true, I enter the loop, and I print count, and currently count is 0, so I print 0. Now, the value of count increases to be 1. So if we were to keep track of the value of count, it starts out as 0, then it increases to 1, and now the loop returns. It checks, is 1 less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is. So we come inside the loop and we print the value of 1. Now, since this was a print and not a print ln, these will all print next to each other on the same line. The value of count is increased. Now count is equal to 2. And I come up here and check again. 2 less than 10? Yes, it is. Count turns to 3. Print 3. Count turns to 4. I print 4. And this process is going to continue. And what ends up happening is people often are not quite sure when to finish. So notice that I print the value, then I increase the value, then I check, is it less than 10? Yes, 9 is less than 10, so I print 9. I come up here, I increase my counter, now I'm 10. Is 10 less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is, so I print 10. Now count becomes 11. Is 11 less than or equal to 10? No, it is not. So now I leave the loop and then the code comes down here. And so these are the values that have been printed. In an event-controlled loop, this loop will continue until a certain event occurs. So right now I have an input and I have a scanner and I have a couple different variables. So this value num is an integer, and I'm using my scanner for the keyboard and I am accepting the next integer. So as long as the number that they enter in is not -999, then I'm going to increase the count, I'm going to add that number to my current sum, and then I'm going to get another number. And so this process will just keep on continuing until the user enters -999. And once the user enters -999, then I exit the loop, and then I can print out the sum of the values that were entered and how many values were entered total. Another type of loop is what's called a do-while loop. And these are a little bit less common. A do-while is what we call a post-test loop. And the reason why it's a post-test loop is because the loop will automatically execute first, And then after executing, it'll test the condition at the end to determine if it should run the loop again. So notice the syntax. We say do, and we do whatever is in the curly braces, and then while this is still true. And notice that at the end of the while statement, there is a semicolon. So this is different than the previous syntax, because on the previous page, the while loop does not have any punctuation here. Okay, that's only for the do while loop. Now, common logic errors. Biggest mistakes with looping are the infinite loop and being off by 1. So an infinite loop can occur when your loop never ends. And essentially that happens when the exit condition is impossible to happen. Maybe, for example, you're trying to exit the condition when the count equals 20, but you forget to increase the count variable. So no matter how many times you do the process, it still thinks count is equal to 0. That's an example of an increment error. Another error is being off by 1. And so this happens quite a bit. It happens when your counting variable starts at 0 or 1 when it should start at the other. Another common place is when we have a less than instead of a less than and equal to in your condition statement. So you might go 1 too far or not 1 enough. And then lastly, this can occur when we increment or decrement at the wrong location. All right, that's it for today.